Hello, and welcome back to another deck tech for the MTG Arena Brawl series that I've been doing on my channel. I'm Mr. Pisto Plays, and today we have a GRUUL token Stompy deck. I know the two kind of don't go together, but we got big creatures, and we got tokens, and we have things that play very well with the tokens. So we have Phylath World Sculptor as the commander of the deck. When he enters the battlefield, you get 0/1 plant tokens equal the number of basic lands you control. And whenever a land enters the battlefield, landfall triggers, and you put 4 1/1 counters on target plant you control. So you can get you can go pretty wide, and there's things that affect the width of Phylath in the deck. We have the only one drop accelerant in green right now in the format, and that is the Gilded Goose. It is a 1 green mana for a flyer, which is 0/2. Enters the battlefield, you create a food token, and then you can tap, sacrifice a food token to make a mana, or you can play a green and a colorless to add another food token. So it can help against the aggressive decks, keeping you alive, but it also provides you with that mana ramp. Then we have the Illusion Caryatid, the 1/1 for 2 mana that taps to add 1 mana of any color, and if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, add 2 mana of any one color instead. Lotus Cobra, a 2 mana 2/1 snake that has landfall, and when the land enters the battlefield, you add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Scavenging Ooze for those pesky reanimator decks. Pay 1, exile a card from a graveyard, and if it's a creature, you put a 1/1 counter on Scavenging Ooze and you gain a life. Tangled Florahedron. I played this in the past. It's 2 mana 1/1, taps for a green, or you can play it as a tapped land. So it either accelerates you or you play it as a land for your land drop. Your Bone Crusher Giant, the adventure instant for a red and a colorless. You deal 2 damage to any target and it can't be prevented. And then for a 3 mana, you get a 4/3 giant that whenever it becomes the target of a spell, Bone Crusher deals damage to that spell's controller. So if you target it, you get dealt damage. Shoot Mob, pretty much should be in every green deck if you can use a wild card to get it. 3 mana 1/1 landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. If you control 6 or more lands, create a token that's a copy of Shoot Swarm instead. So I usually wait till I can play this on 6 with 6 mana in play, and then play a land to get a copy of it. It's a dangerous card, gets out of hand really fast. Thrashing Brontodon, it's just 3 mana 3/4, so it's got some really good stats, and you can sacrifice it with 1 generic mana to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Grumgully the Generous, so this is one of the first cards that plays really well with Phylath. He's a 3 mana 3/3 Goblin Shaman, legendary creature. Other non-human creature you control enter the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter on it. So any Phylath token enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it. So if you have 4 lands, you get 4 1/2s. Helps play around with it. Rada, Heart of Keld, has first strike on your turn. It is a 3/3 for 3 mana. You may look at the top card of your library and you can play lands. So that's nice. Can take lands off the top of your deck to clear your draws, and it has an activated ability of 6, 4, and 1 red and a green to gain +X for X is the number of lands you control. So you are trying to ramp, so at times you can make it quite big. Ogre Battle Driver, whenever another creature enters a battlefield under your control, that creature gets +2/+0 and gains haste until the end of the turn. It's a 3/3 for 2 red and 2 colorless. Makes all the Phylath tokens 2/1s when they enter, and it also makes him a 7/5 when he enters with haste. Grim Razor, green and 3 colorless, but typically you want to use the mutate ability of 2 green and a colorless. It has reach and trample, and whenever this creature mutates, destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. And it is a 4 mana 4/4 if you just want to play a beater, or it can turn one of your tokens from Phylath into a 4/4 and then it'll blow up an artifact. So, or enchantment. So it has lots of multiple uses. Up next we have the Migratory Greathorn. 4 mana 3/4 this time, but it also has mutate. This time it's a green and 2 colorless. Whenever this creature mutates, you can search for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. They're again great on a Phylath token to make it useful, or if you can combine these two together, you can blow up 2 things, search for 2 lands, so on and so forth. Then we have Questing Beast. It's kind of the Doomblade, or not Doomblade, the Hero's Downfall of the deck. For 2 green and 2 colorless, it has a Vigilance, Death Touch, and Haste. It's a 4/4. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. When it deals combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. So it stops damage from being prevented. And whenever the creature deals damage to an opponent, it deals damage to target planeswalker that player controls. So you can attack them and hit them plus hit their planeswalker. So he's just a great overall beast. We have Renata Called to the Hunt for 2 green and 2 colorless. It is a star 3 where her power is equal to the number of devotion to green. And here again, it's another one of those Gum Gully effects. When another creature you control enters the battlefield, it gets a 1/1 counter, so Phylath tokens gain the counters. Solemn Simulacrum, or Sad Robot, 4 generic mana for a 2/2. Enters the battlefield, search for a basic. These are usually searching for mountains, as you can see in the bottom corner. I don't have as many mountains as I have forests, because this deck is very heavily green based. And then when he dies, or it dies, you draw a card. Then we have the Quartz Wood Crasher, just a fun GRUUL Stompy card that I wanted to play. It has trample. And whenever one or more creatures you control with trample deal combat damage to a player, create an XX green dinosaur beast creature token with trample, where X is the amount of damage those creatures dealt to that player. That can get out of hand. Also doesn't have to hit very often, and then basically the game's over. And we have Ashaya, Soul of the Wild. So non-token creatures are forests. It costs 2 green and 3 colorless. Its power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control. Non-creature tokens you control are forest lands, in addition to their other land types. So it hits very well with Phylath, as every non-token creature after Phylath and Ashaya are in play triggers landfall. So it triggers it for Phylath, Shoot Swarm. Those are the 2 main ones. Brash Taunter. I love this card. It is so much fun. It's a 1/1 for 5 or 4 colorless and a red. It's indestructible, and whenever it is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent. You can pay 1 red and 2 colorless for it to fight something else. So you play it, and unless they have trample creatures, they're probably not going to attack into you, because they're just attacking themselves in a way. And then you can just start hitting things with the Brash Taunter later in the game. And the highest of the high end, which is the Beanstalk Giant. And it's usually used its sorcery, adventure, fertile footsteps for a green and 2 colorless to search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield. And then for 7 mana, it is a star with power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control. Right, those are the creatures. That's the creature suite of the deck. On to the non-creature spells. We have Primal Might, great fight spell, and it also makes one of your creatures very large if you have enough mana. I just think it fits well in any green deck. This is something I've been trying, and it seems to be okay. Weaponize the monsters. So if you play Phylath, you get like 4 or 5 tokens. Next turn, the tokens aren't doing much, so you can actually use those tokens to start blowing things up. It's worth a try, I think. Then we have Heroic Intervention, a green and a colorless. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible to the end of turn. So those wraths or destroy spells that you don't want to have kill your creatures, you can turn them into one-sided wraths or plague winds and they destroy their own stuff. Inscription of Abundance. I think this card is bonkers and should be seeing more play, not only in this format but in other formats. Choose one, and this spell is kicked. Choose a number, any number instead. So for 5 mana, 2 green and 3 colorless, you can put 2 1/1 counters on a creature. You gain X life, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control, and target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. And the nice thing about it is it's an instant. So at instant speed, you can make combat terrible. You can pick off or 2-for-1 them on a removal spell, or on a pump spell. I think it's a fantastic card. Once Upon a Time, free card. Choosing if you play it as your first spell, or even just for a green and a colorless late game, digging for that creature spell that you need or that extra land drop that you need. Just overall a great instant. Ram through. Target creature you control deals damage to its power equal to target creature you don't control. Nice thing about this is it's not a fight. It's just dealing damage. And then anything excess goes over and kills a controller and hits the controller instead if your creature has trample. And it's an instant there again. So for a green and a colorless, using your big fatties, you can start killing things at instant speed. Then Arcane Signet, simple artifact, ramp, 2 colorless, add 1 mana of any color to your commander's color identity. Then we have Kazul's Fury, which is one of the spell lands, or Kazul's Cliffs. Kazul's Cliffs enters the battlefield tapped, gives you a red, or you can fling something for a red and 2 colorless, sacrifice a creature, deal damage to a target. At instant speed there again. This one's sorcery speed. You have Bala Ged Sanctuary. It's a green land that enters tapped. Or you play a green and 2 colorless to return target card from your graveyard. It's good early if you need a land drop. It's great late if you need to return something. We have Cultivate, search for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal those cards, put them onto one onto the battlefield tapped, the other into your hand, then shuffle your library. So you're fueling Phylath late game, and you're ramping yourself to Phylath early game. GRUUL Uprising, when it enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Creatures you control have trample. This gets relevant with making big plant tokens. And whenever a creature with power 4 or greater is entered the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So it's card draw, later game, early game is trample. Then we have Rolling Regrowth. In this deck, it can be an instant speed combat trick with Phylath tokens, or it's just hold up a Kazul's Fury, and then if nothing happens, you can play this to get your basic lands to ramp you to Phylath. So it's a green and 2 colorless for an instant. Sack a land, search for 2 basic lands, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. Heraldic Banner for 3 colorless mana. When it enters the battlefield, choose a color. You're always choosing green. Creatures you control get +1/+0. So all the Phylath tokens are now 1/1s. And you can tap it to add 1 mana of the chosen color to your mana pool. We have 1 at 4, which is really at 8. You like to cast this on 8. It gets you to Phylath on 6 with the bonus additive. If you have a land to play, you can play Phylath and then trigger landfall. Search your library for 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. If it's kicked for the 4 colorless, put 2 1/1 counters on each creature you control. So if you can get to 8 and play this, it's kind of like a little overrun effect without the trample. but with Garrick's Uprising, they kind of play well together there, and it just makes your team big. Then we have Vivian, Monster's Advocate. You can look at the top card of your library. You can play creature spells from the top of your library. So with this, along with Rada, it's a nice little combination of clearing lands or casting creatures. And you can +1 to get a 3/3 beast creature token with your choice of Vigilance, Reach, or Trample. Then you can -2, so whenever you cast your next creature, you can look for a card with converted mana cost less, shuffle your library, and then put that card onto the battlefield. So if you can do this with Phylath, and then you go find Ogre Battle Driver, it's a very cool combo. And she starts at 3 mana for 5, or 3 loyalty for a 5 mana Planeswalker, and that -2 can end games if you have done it right, if you have enough time to do it. Then we have Return of the Wildspeaker, green card draw, very important in some games, but more often than not you're playing a green and 4 colorless at instant speed to give all your non-human creatures +3/+3, so all the Phylath tokens get big and can win you the game. We have Ember Cleaver. I just love this card. You can attack with a bunch of tokens and it's your big thing, and they kind of probably see it coming, but whether they see it coming or not is irrelevant, because giving something +1/+1 and double strike and trample at instant speed, it's hard to beat. Then we have Turn Timber Symbiosis. So it's a land that enters the battlefield untapped if you pay 3 life, so it's like a really expensive shock land, or you can pay 7. Then you can find a creature card. So look at the top 7 cards of your library for 7 mana. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield, and if it is a converted mana cost 3 or less, it enters with 3 1/1 counters on it, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So it has a few targets at the 1, 2, and 3 spot, but it's just nice if you can, any of these cards that you get are valuable and can be very good. Other than, I would think, the Migratory Greathorn and the Grimrazor, everything else flies away. And the last non-creature spell in the deck is the Great Henge. It's 9 mana but costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. You can tap it to get 2 green mana and gain 2 life, and whenever a non-token, so it doesn't really fit with Phylath and the tokens, enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on it and draw a card. This is a way to just turn through your deck if you can cast creature after creature and gain you life if you're behind in an aggro match, if you can land it. Sometimes it's difficult. Then for the deck, we have 18 basics, 13 forests, 5 mountains. We have the Craig Crown Pathway and the Timber Crown Pathway and a Temple of Abandon. So there you have it. That is the deck. Thank you for watching. If you've gotten this far, this is Phylath World Sculptor. And if you want to check out the matches that I'm going to be playing with this deck, find them in the link below or in the card somewhere on the screen. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.